Hi, I'm Katie with Little Angel Service Dogs. I'm the director here and I'm going to give you some information on our application process and what it's going to look like when you receive a service dog. The application process can be lengthy, so I thank you in advance for your patience. We can receive up to 2,000 application requests in a single year, and it takes a lot of manpower to review each of those applications in detail to give them each the attention that they deserve. We understand that each application comes in is representing an individual who's really struggling with life, and we want to see if one of our dogs can help. We are looking at 3 different criteria to see if one of our service dogs is going to be a good match. The first thing that we're going to look at is, does the applicant have a disability that can be helped by a service dog? The second criteria that we're looking at is, are they going to be able to care for this dog, give the dog enough enrichment, give the dog a full life, give them the right exercise, take care of their health. We have a responsibility first to that dog, so that's a very important part of the criteria that we're making sure that our applicants will be able to meet. And the third criteria that we need to make sure is that the recipient is not going to be hindered or hurt by a service dog. Sometimes there is an applicant who is at a point in their life that a service dog is just not a good fit right now, and so in certain cases we're going to ask that that applicant apply again later. Whenever that happens, if they have already paid for an application fee, we're not going to request that they even pay another fee. We're going to make sure that they are able to send in their second application for free. The purpose behind the application fee is to make sure that we can pay for the staff that spends hours reviewing each and every application that comes in. We really do a very good job of reviewing those applications. The first portion of the application process is the paper application. And if everything is sent in a timely manner, that can take 2 months. But if everything doesn't come in very quickly, it can take a little bit longer than that. So we have the paper application that you fill out as the applicant, as the disabled party or family member, and then there's also the medical providers portion, and then there is a personal referral that needs to come in. Once we receive those documents, we review them in detail, and then we're going to ask for videos. The video is going to show us a home inspection. Basically, we want to make sure that the dog is going to be safe and healthy in your home. And then we're also going to be asking for a video from you explaining how you would like to have a dog help you and what your goals are. After you get through with the first portions of that application process, then you're going to be sent over to a phone consultation. Before you have that phone consultation, we're going to ask that you watch this video because it's going to go over a lot of important details that we want you to consider before you receive a service dog. Getting a dog through Little Angels is only one option out of many that every applicant has. There are a lot of different ways to receive a service dog. We are a good option for a lot of people, but we are not the best option for everyone. A major goal that we have as an organization, this group of people that has come together to provide service dogs, is to make sure that people understand all the different ways that you can get one. Little Angels is not the end-all, be-all. So first we want to make sure that you're looking at all these different routes. We can even help direct you there. We can help guide you, give you information on other organizations when we're speaking with you over the phone, talk to you in more detail about all these other options that are available before you join our waiting list to get a service dog. When you have your phone consultation with us, we are going to dissect your everyday life. We're going to look at your regular activities, the places that you normally go. We're going to discuss your home environment, family members that are living with you, including other pets if they live with you. And we're going to discuss the different tasks that we think would be able to help you. So a task is what makes a service dog because they are actually performing a trained task that assists with your disability. We'll discuss things like possibilities of medical alert, deep pressure therapy, dialing phones, retrieving medication, a lot of different details, and it's all custom tailored to each recipient and what is going to work best for them. We are also going to explain the realities of having this dog in your life, day to day, what this is going to look like. Sometimes an applicant is going to view a situation that's not as realistic as we would hope. We want everyone to know that it takes a lot of work and a lot of structure to have a service dog successfully help you. A service dog is not a pet. I know that everyone who's done any research has heard that over and over again, but a pet basically wanders around and kind of does what they do. A service dog has to walk a very narrow path in order to be available and provide assistance and not hinder the recipient. We're expecting a service dog to respond about 95% of the time, the first time that they're asked to respond to a command. So they are animals, they aren't machines, they're not going to be perfect. None of us are perfect, but the dog still has to have a lot of structure in order to maintain a very high level of functionality to respond to those commands most of the time. In the phone consultation, we are also going to have a question and answer session and make sure that you have a very thorough understanding of the entire process and answer any questions that are going to be specific for you. When looking into getting a service dog, we realize that there's no easy way to get one. There's always going to be some form of an investment involved when someone is getting a service dog. And you just have to decide as an individual or as a family if that form of investment is going to be the best fit for you. Some ways that people can invest in getting a service dog would be financially. That's the first thing we think of when we hear the word investment. We're thinking of financial or a monetary investment. You could invest financially in receiving a service dog, but most of the time that's not what people do because it ends up being very expensive to purchase a service dog. If you've done any research at all in service dogs so far, you'll understand that it could be tens of thousands of dollars if you were to just flat out purchase a service dog, or if you were to make even a large donation to a nonprofit organization. Most people just can't do that, and that's why there are nonprofits, so that we can fundraise from the general public to get this very expensive product out to our recipients. And the product is not the dog. The dog is only a small part of this. I'm very sensitive to the fact that when people hear the word product, they're thinking, oh, that's so insensitive, you're calling a dog a product. The dog is not the product. The product is all the training that has gone into this very rare and special dog in the first place, and also the follow-up support that the recipient receives for the lifetime of the dog. Another form of investment that someone could make when they are receiving a service dog would be to invest their time and energy training one themselves. For some people, this is a good choice, and we can go over that as an option when we're talking to you. We don't want to rule anything out. In fact, we have resources that we can refer you to help you step by step work through the process of self-training your own dog. But a big part of the investment of self-training a dog is the investment of risk. And that's because there is no guarantee that the dog you're working with is going to end up being a service dog who can assist you. There are about 1 in 300 dogs that have the innate ability to be a service dog in the first place. What that means is, if I were to go to a shelter and I was only looking at dogs that were between 1 and 2 years old, there's only going to be about 1 in 300 that have the ability to be trained. Then the dog needs the special training put on top of it. And then beyond that, each dog is an individual. And so we've got different personalities, we've got different propensities in each dog, and that is going to make a dog better fit to help with different disabilities or different lifestyles. So even if someone is able to get a dog completely done with the training, if they have a dog that is rare enough to be a service dog in the first place, and then they invested all that time and energy training the dog, is it going to be the right dog for you? Knowing how to find the right dog in the first place can lessen your risk. We can discuss that. Again, I'm totally open to helping our applicants receive a dog or get a dog in different forms, but it's certainly a different type of investment. And now, if you were to get a dog through an organization, you're looking at investments of maybe time and energy fundraising, or you're looking at your time waiting on a waiting list to get a service dog. So we're going to back up a little bit and we're going to talk about that and getting dogs through different organizations. The thing with nonprofits is that we're all very highly governed by the Internal Revenue Service. Of course we are. The IRS is there to make sure that taxes are paid. But when someone is making a legitimate donation to a 501c3 nonprofit, they're going to receive a tax deduction. And the IRS doesn't want to give away tax deductions if it's not something that's very legitimate. And beyond that, nonprofit organizations, we don't have to pay taxes on our income. And so, of course, we have very strict rules and guidelines that we have to follow, and we should be doing that. The nonprofits, it's a design to help the general public, and it's funded by and for the general public. So, of course, we have to be really careful with that and be respectful of that. What it means is that you can't fundraise any way that you want to for a nonprofit. It's very strict. There's a lot of criteria, again, that we have to meet when we're going to be fundraising for a nonprofit. What this means is that if a volunteer went out and they were to fundraise on behalf of a nonprofit, but maybe they did it wrong, it can come back to the nonprofit and the 501c3 status can be revoked. It can be taken away because of something that a volunteer did with all good intention. Because really it's up to the nonprofit to make sure that volunteers know how to do fundraising. Now, because of this, all of the nonprofits that are out there, we're all very creative and careful about how funds are going to be raised for the program. How are we going to raise tens of thousands of dollars per dog that we train and get them out to the public in a timely manner? So we have different ways that people are able to invest in a nonprofit. And I'm going to explain totally opposite ends of a spectrum to explain how different organizations function. So on one end of the spectrum, you are going to have organizations that will not allow you to be involved in the fundraising process. They have trained staff that know exactly how to fundraise for each and every recipient on their waiting list. And they're going to make sure it's all done legally and successfully. There are a lot of people signing up for that, as you can imagine. You could say, they're signing up to get something for nothing. You could look at it that way. Essentially what's happening is that you are receiving a beautiful gift from this organization. All of these people have gotten together. They've put all the time and energy and love into training this service dog to give it to an individual who really needs it. On top of that, they also paid their own invoice. That's a beautiful gift, but you have to wait in line for that to happen. The nonprofit is going to be raising the funds for those individuals in order. So the people that signed up years ahead of you, that's who they're fundraising for right now. Once they finish fundraising for them, everybody's going to move up a little bit, and eventually it will be your turn where they're raising the funds for your service dog. So when you're going with an organization like that, on that end of the spectrum, your investment is wait time. You're going to be waiting for years and years for that to happen. Now, again, it does vary because we're talking about a lot of different organizations. So you do need to ask the organization what the wait times are, but typically speaking, it's going to be years. So a business model like that is usually adding to the averages. We're looking at law of averages here. So if you've done your research, you've probably seen that it takes years to be on a waiting list to receive a service dog, and that's pretty typical all across the board. That type of business model is making that average wait time go up. Now we can also look at the opposite end of the spectrum. These organizations are going to require that you're involved in the fundraising. You have to raise all of it, and you can't mention their organization while you're doing it. So you could go out and make a very public Facebook post all about how you're getting a service dog and bringing in the funds to pay for that dog, but you never mentioned that organization, so it never went back to them. There are some obvious negatives involved with this type of investment, which I'm sure you've already picked up on. You're not going to get any help in the fundraising process. You can't mention the organization. Some other things that the financial supporters, they may not receive their tax deduction. What if you were taxed as if that were your income? If you were ever audited, the IRS will look at the funds that are in your bank account and they're going to want to know where that went. And because you then turned around and wrote a check to that nonprofit, it's not going to be considered a typical 501c3 tax deduction for you, because the IRS looks at it as you are receiving something that is worth the monetary value of your gift. And so you don't get a tax deduction for that. If you've ever been out at a fair and you see a nonprofit kiosk set up and they're saying, hey, if you give us $5, you're going to get this really cool mug. That's not a 501c3 tax deduction, because you are receiving something that is worth the monetary value of your gift. So if you were to write a check for $30,000 and then you received a service dog, the IRS is not going to think that you made a donation, because you basically purchased the dog. That business model over here on this end of the spectrum, that business model is really like a sole proprietorship or a for-profit business. They could still be a nonprofit and require that you come up with these funds somehow. There are a lot of organizations that will require that you're involved in the fundraising. So again, we have two totally different types of organizations, opposite ends of the spectrum, different types of investment. You have on this end, you have the organizations who won't let you be involved in fundraising, which is a good choice for a lot of people, because all you have to do is wait. Your investment choice is waiting. It's wait time. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have organizations that require that you do all of the fundraising. So your investment choice with them will only be energy and fundraising. But it can be positives and negatives on this end too. The negatives are pretty obvious. Like, you have to go out and you have to raise all of this money on your own. A positive could be that you are very good at fundraising. And if you're better than people who signed up years before you, then you will bypass them in the waiting list. And so your investment may not be time on a waiting list. But the same reason that it's a good choice for you is why it could be a bad choice for them. And that's very sad to me, because people are signing up to get service dogs because they need them because of a disability, and their very disability could be why they legitimately cannot be involved in fundraising. It could be that it keeps them from going out into the community, or it could be that the time that they're spending to help a family member with their disability is prohibiting them from fundraising. So positives and negatives both ways. So you're going to have everything in between as well, in these totally opposite ends of the spectrum. Little Angel Service Dogs fits almost exactly in the middle. So we will have people that come to us and we know from the very beginning that they cannot be involved in fundraising, and that's okay. So going back to our criteria and how people are accepted to receive a dog, none of that has to do with their ability to fundraise. It's because they're disabled, and we know a dog's going to be able to help them, it won't hinder them, and they're going to be able to take care of that dog. If they can't be involved with the fundraising with Little Angels, we will raise the funds for them, but they have to wait in line, because we have a lot of people on our fundraising waiting list, and a lot of them are not going to be able to be involved in fundraising. It's hard for us to know who's going to be involved or not, because we don't have any requirements for people to be involved in fundraising. We don't say that it has to be done in a certain amount of time or that you have to raise any certain amount of funds. We have our fundraising goal, which I'm going to go over in just a little bit, but we don't require that anyone raise that money. If someone can't be involved, we are going to raise it for them. They just have to wait in line. So going with our organization and not being able to be involved in fundraising and having us do the fundraising for them is going to be just like going through an organization that doesn't allow you to be involved in fundraising. Either way, you're going to be waiting for years while you're slowly moving up that list, and eventually you will move to spot number 1, and then we are going to raise the funds for your service dog. We're always raising funds as an organization, and that money is only going towards the person that is number 1 on that list. So when we have a fundraiser, let's say that we raise $10,000 in a fundraiser, it's not going to be evenly distributed amongst every single recipient on that list, because they all joined the waiting list at different times. It's fair and ethical to give that money to the person that is number 1 on the list, which means that they have now waited longer than everyone else. Everyone will get their turn and everyone will receive the funds. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take for that to happen. And one way to speed that up is if you did want to be involved in fundraising yourself. So that's also an option We still have to make sure that it's being done legally, and we're going to help you make sure it's done successfully. So anyone that does want to be involved in the fundraising, we give out a fundraising guide, and this goes over step-by-step instruction on how to do different fundraisers. You select options off of that list, anything that you feel comfortable with, and then you are required to work with our fundraising coordinator. So it is her job to make sure that it is all done legally, and we want to make sure it's done successfully. You are still going to be doing the busy work for that fundraiser. She is just going to be your assistant. You can consider her a long distance assistant. So it's guidance that she's offering you, and you're doing that work. And again, if you can't be involved in the fundraising, that's okay. We will do it for you. Some people will sign up and they're going to think that they're going to be able to fundraise the full amount, and they can't. You still have to wait to be in spot number 1 before we raise the rest of those funds for you. Sometimes we'll have a recipient think that, because they raised $10,000, which is a very substantial amount of money and a lot of energy that they put into that fundraising. But they think because they raised $10,000 that they would be ahead of someone who signed up before them who couldn't raise anything. So let's say that we've got John Smith who signs up. He knows that he's never going to be able to raise a single penny to get a service dog, which is perfectly fine. And then we have someone that comes in after him, and this person raises $10,000. They think that they're going to jump up ahead of him on the waiting list. But if we did that, it would be unethical, because it means that John Smith would never receive his service dog. There would always be someone that could raise more money than him, and he would always be pushed back on the list. So everyone's going to move up fairly on that list until they're at spot number 1. When you reach spot number 1, we're going to look at a fundraising ledger. Every single recipient receives a fundraising ledger, and this is how we track all of the funds that are brought in through the organization. And if anyone solicited funds, we're going to put those funds towards that recipient's ledger. But when the recipient is out there fundraising, they cannot solicit funds from the general public and say, I am getting a service dog, donate for me to get a dog. They could explain that they're getting a dog through Little Angel Service Dogs, but they shouldn't be asking the public to give them that money, because then it's not according to the 501c3 standards. It's not the right structure, because again, we have to fundraise from the general public for the general public. So there's really a fine line there. You can solicit funds for Little Angels, and any of the funds that you are soliciting will go towards your dog, and we're going to put that on your ledger. It's going to move you forward in getting that dog, and paying for all the expenses that we're faced with as an organization. But we are not able to go out and say, hey, my name is Sally, I need to get a service dog, donate for my dog. What you can say is, my name is Sally, this is my disability, a service dog is really going to help me. I'm going to be getting a dog through Little Angel Service Dogs. They help a lot of different people. Would you be willing to make a donation towards Little Angel Service Dogs? And like I said, the funds that are brought in, that you are soliciting, they're going to go right towards your ledger. When you get to spot number 1, we look at your ledger and we see if there are any funds there. We're going to raise either all of it if you weren't able to be involved in any fundraising, or we're going to raise the remainder. Anyone that is able to be involved in their fundraising, some of them are able to fundraise the full amount, and that moves them forward to get their service dog. So whenever the funds are raised, whether you raised them in 2 weeks or whether you had to wait for years to get to the top of the waiting list, whenever that happens, you're going to move forward. So some examples of fundraising. Some people will have a letter that they send out to friends and family. And if they have a lot of friends and family that can support them, then the funds roll in pretty quickly. It just takes the time that it takes for the checks to arrive in the mail. So if they're done with fundraising in 2 weeks, they move on to our placement waiting list almost immediately. And we've had large organizations and businesses provide grants and fully support whole service dogs and pay for all of the funds that we are looking for one dog. And we've had everything from Make-A-Wish to NFL teams to businesses that we've never even heard of before make this very generous donation. Other people are going to work for months to organize an event, and then the event brings in all of the funds in a single day. So it might have taken months to get there, but the one event covered all of the funds for the dog. Sometimes we'll have a recipient throw an event in their community, and it's so successful that they've raised funds for 3 dogs, and then ends up helping other recipients that are on our waiting list. So there's a lot of different ways to be involved in fundraising. The best thing to do is going to be to review this fundraising guide. We can send a copy of that to you anytime that you request it. Just send us an email. We'll make sure that you get that. And you can also speak to our fundraising coordinator at any time. But we're going to make sure that you're on our waiting list before we start moving you forward with the fundraising process, because we want to have a ledger created for you so that we can keep track of any funds that you are soliciting. Organizations generally take the overall expenses of the program and divide that by how many dogs they plan on placing in a year to come up with the amount needed to keep the organization functioning for that year. Many can't see how so much money could possibly pour into one individual dog, but for any pet owners who have ever boarded their pet for even a week, they know that the cost is often similar to the expense of their own vacation. This is because there are so many staff members needed to care for the dog and provide enough enrichment for them to do well in a kennel environment. Some of our dogs are boarded at our kennel, while others are boarded in foster homes. During the course of a dog's training, this often changes because it is healthy and productive for them to be in both environments, off and on. The dogs who are in foster homes and cared for by volunteers still have many staff hours put into managing the fostering experience, with regular instruction and follow-ups with the fosters. For the dogs fostered by dedicated inmates in our prison programs, we have staff who have weeks of travel expenses due to the need to travel to the prisons for weeks at a time to instruct and oversee the prison program, as well as manage it administratively between trips. The travel expenses to the prisons often include airfare or mileage, and hotel expenses due to the prisons being an 8-hour drive from our facility. Expenses for each dog will certainly include the initial adoption or whelping costs. If a litter is born from our own breeding program, we have the yearly expenses of both parents of that litter, in addition to fees paid to the canine cryobank, veterinary, and supplies of whelping, which is around $3,000 per litter, with an average litter size of 6 puppies. If we are lucky enough to adopt a dog from a shelter, we will have an adoption fee of $69. But if we purchase a puppy or a dog from a breeder, we pay between $2,000 to $5,000 per puppy. We aren't purchasing run-of-the-mill dogs for this program because they need to have proven lines of health-tested dogs for generations. Other direct expenses per dog will include boarding that dog for 1 to 2 years, an average of 600 one-on-one hours to train a dog, an additional average of 300 one-on-one hours for grooming, and driving that individual to field trips, travel expenses of field trips, supply runs, and veterinary visits. Then we have direct supplies such as leashes, vests, collars, tags, microchips, booties, crates, toys, harnesses. We have veterinary procedures, health clearances, medications, and the food that goes into each individual dog, in addition to the trainer's time during handler training when the recipient learns to work with their dog. Then there are all the administrative staffing required for behind-the-scenes work, excluding those application reviews, which end up paying for themselves, hence the $25 application fee. Our administrative team collaboratively returns voicemails, conducts phone consultations, oversees human resources, manages social media and our website, supports the recipients on our waiting lists, coordinates fundraising, and together we'll answer close to 300 emails every day. There are also the expenses related to the facility itself, the lease, utilities, and kennel upkeep, such as fencing repairs and landscaping. Insurance is also very expensive, both for workers' compensation of employees working in a high-risk related industry, commercial auto, and for the high liability we are exposed to in having so many dogs out in public settings throughout the United States. While these expenses are quite enough on their own, we also have the exact same expenses for dogs who never make it as service dogs, which are also included into the grand total. The fact that we do have so many amazing volunteers is what helps to keep our costs lower than the national average at $28,000 per dog. Something that I would encourage you to do if you're pretty new to the research is just to type in some of the biggest names in this industry, look at the largest service dog organizations online, and they're going to be really upfront too about how much it costs them to train dogs. And so much of the time you're going to see $50,000 per dog and $70,000 per dog that they place. So again, $28,000, it's not bad when you're comparing it to that, but no matter what you do, $28,000 is still so much money to fundraise. So hopefully this paints a little bit of a picture of the expenses that organizations are facing and why it does end up costing so much and why we have such a high fundraising goal in order to stay in business and to continue placing these amazing dogs. So again, when we have our phone consultation, we're going to go over this information. We're going to make sure that you have all of your questions answered. We can help guide you through the different options available. Again, we want to make sure that you're going the best route for you. Sometimes that means it's not little angels, and we can still guide you in that direction. But at least you have this information and you can weigh that. The reason I like to go over all of these different routes to receive a service dog is because I feel like it would be really hard to make the decision that Little Angels is the right choice for you if you didn't have other good options to compare us to. And there are a lot of good options to receive a service dog. We are just one of those options. Once fundraising is completed, our recipients move over to what we call the placement waiting list. So yes, there are 2 waiting lists. The first one is the fundraising waiting list, and then we've got the placement waiting list. And they both have different functions. So for one, we're raising the funds for the service dog. And then 2, we are actively working on matching someone with that dog. From time to time, it will vary. Sometimes it's an average of 6 months to receive a dog once fundraising is completed. That's once you're on the placement waiting list. Sometimes it bumps up to 1-year average. So we'll talk to you about that. Having a 1-year average, I just want to explain what that means, what average means. Because I know after speaking with a lot of our recipients that when they hear a time frame, they latch onto that because deep down as humans, it's human nature to be positive, and we're thinking like, hey, it could take 1 year, so it's going to take me 1 year to get that dog. We've had recipients receive their dog in as little as a month after they joined our waiting list. And so sometimes people will grasp onto that and say, it will be a month for me too. And then they're really disappointed when it takes a very normal amount of time for them to receive their dog. So if it is a 1-year average wait time to receive a dog after fundraising is completed, what that means is that there are some recipients who receive their dog almost as soon as fundraising is completed, while other people could wait close to 2 years. The longest we have ever had anyone wait to receive a service dog has been 2 years and 2 months. Usually when someone is waiting on the longer end, it's because they needed something very specific in a dog. They not only needed a dog that could turn on lights for them and retrieve things for them and cover them with a blanket, but they also needed the dog to be hypoallergenic. So, you know, the more specifications that a recipient has for a dog, sometimes it's choices that they're making, like they want a dog with a low shed coat, or they want a dog that is yellow, or they want a male, or they want a female, or they want a lab, or they want the English cream golden retriever. Whatever specifications there are, then we have a smaller pool of dogs to select from. So the way that this placement waiting list works is we have a spreadsheet that has all of our recipients listed who are on the waiting list, and everything about their life is listed here. Some organizations will only place 1 or 2 types of assistance dogs. So as an example, if they only placed mobility assistance dogs, then they are going to release every dog from their program who doesn't have the right personality or propensities to be a mobility assistance dog. And they could give that dog to another organization, or they're going to release it as a pet. Organizations sometimes also set very specific criteria for a recipient. They'll say, you cannot be accepted into our program if you have children living in your home who are under 12 years old. Or maybe they'll say something like, you can't have any other pets if you're going to receive a dog from our organization. We do place dogs even with recipients who are young children. As long as the parent is the handler and they're going to take control of that dog, then it's going to work out because the responsible party is the parent. But the dog can still certainly assist the young child with the aid of the parent who is giving the dog guidance. We can also place dogs in homes if there are other pets, as long as those pets will be friendly with the service dog. So again, we have all of this criteria written out for each recipient. And then when a dog is ready to graduate, we're looking at that dog's personality and their propensities, and we're saying this dog is going to be a good match for this person. So we start at the top of the list and we work our way down to find that perfect match. And let's say that we have a dog that it can be a seizure alert dog. This dog worked well because its personality was just slightly anxious, and dogs that are slightly anxious make really good seizure alert dogs, but would make a horrible psychiatric service dog. And so we're looking at that dog and we're looking at this list, and maybe we work our way 10 people down before we find the first person that needs a seizure alert dog. Now let's also say that this specific dog does really well working around other animals in public, but in the home it would be too distracted with those animals and it would want to follow them around instead of following the recipient and focusing on the recipient, which is absolutely needed since this is a seizure alert dog and the dog needs to cue into very subtle changes in this person to know that a seizure is imminent and then properly alert them. Let's also say that this dog would do fine in a home with young children. It won't be distracted by the children. It's just going to be a good match. Now, number 10 on the list, they need a seizure alert dog, but they also have 2 cats in their home. And so we say, this isn't going to be a good match. We're not going to offer the dog to this recipient. We don't think it's going to be a good blend. So we work our way down the list. Maybe the next person that needs a seizure alert dog on that list is person number 15. Perhaps this is a child who needs a seizure alert dog, and we see that they don't have any other pets in the home. We're saying, hey, this is a really good match. So we reach out to the recipient who's number 15 on the placement waiting list, and we make the offer of this dog. And this is a yellow male Labrador, let's say. And the recipient says, well, thank you so much for offering me this dog. This is very tempting, but we're going to hold out because we really want an English cream golden retriever. And they have that choice. They can certainly wait. And so we'll say, hey, no problem. We'll get to you next time. And so then we'll move down the list. Maybe we get to number 20. Before we see another good fit, we could reach out and offer them the dog, and then they accept the dog. So our recipients always have the choice to pass on a dog or accept the dog, but we're not even going to offer them the dog unless we know that it's going to be a good fit. If we place the dog with the wrong recipient, it will end up hindering that person for the lifetime of the dog. And we have a responsibility to that recipient. We made a promise to them when we added them onto our waiting list that we were going to come up with a good match for them. And it's not just the dog's training. It is who that dog was genetically designed to be, what's their personality, what is their propensities, and we know this dog better than anyone. I just want to take a moment too to say that it is very easy as a recipient on that list to look at a picture of a dog and read their bio and hold on to that dog like a dream. I think that's going to be the best dog for them, and then they're really disappointed if that dog is released from training or if it's placed with another recipient. So I just encourage our recipients, you can look at those pictures and just get some backstory on what's going on with the dogs that are in training, but try not to get attached to a dog. When we offer you the dog, it's going to work for you. So just wait until we make that offer. When you've accepted the dog, you're going to be coming out to San Diego for your handler training experience, and you're going to be here for 2 weeks. This is our map that shows all of the dogs that we've placed and where they're living now. As you can see, a lot of them are in Southern California, but we do have dogs all the way over there in Maine. They're just everywhere, which is really neat. So about half of our recipients are coming to us from out of state, but that could be a big consideration for you if you have to travel. So if you did find another organization that had the same standards as Little Angels and you know that you're going to be helped, but they are local to you, it's going to be better to get a dog through that local organization for sure. But we are very accustomed to working with our recipients who are coming to us from out of state, and we have a lot of procedures in place to make sure that training continues even though we are guiding you long distance. So for anyone that needs to come out to Little Angels, just keep in mind that you're going to have those travel expenses for the 2 weeks. Throughout the 2 weeks of handler training, we're going to be teaching you in a lot of different ways. Different people learn better from different angles, so we make sure that our recipients leave having the instruction in as many ways as possible. We repeat the information over and over again. That way it's going to stay in your long-term memory. And we are going to be teaching you through demonstration, through lecture. You get the hands-on practice. You get to read the information. You get to answer our questions both in writing and verbally. We're going to be doing role playing with you before we actually go into public, and we are also going with you into public. So the first week we are meeting with you every day for 2 hours at our ranch. This is a private session, just you and your dog and your trainer, and anyone else that you brought along with you can enjoy that experience as well. And then you are sent back to your hotel room or home for about 4 hours of written homework and reading assignments. The second week, you get to bring your dog back with you in the evening. So now you have your dog 24 hours a day. We do not want to send that dog with you until you fully understand how to work with them, but you will still experience some hurdles in the evenings and then get to come right back and work with a trainer the following day. And we're going to be taking you to a lot of different public locations in San Diego. We're going to take you out to restaurants, movie theaters, shopping malls, amusement parks. If you go bowling, we take you bowling. If you go ice skating, we're going to explain how you're going to do that and maybe even go with you to a roller rink. No, your dog is not going to wear roller skates. There are different ways to handle dogs in different situations. And we want to make sure that you are fully prepared for that before you bring your dog home. After the 2 weeks of handler training, you leave feeling like a service dog expert. And you have been given a lot of instruction and you are doing really well with your dog. But you are about to go back into your everyday life with your regular responsibilities and your regular stressors, and you need to integrate your dog into that. And it is no easy process. So we are going to require that we are in contact with you every day for a full month after you bring that dog home. This is even after the 2 weeks of training every day through handler training. In addition to you needing to integrate that dog into your life, the dog has also realized that the trainers are no longer present. And dogs, not being machines, not robots, they are going to pick up on different things. And a dog coming from a hierarchy background, they might say, hey, if you're not going to be the leader, I'm going to be the leader. And a service dog can't do that. A service dog really needs to respond most of the time the first time you ask them to, and they need to take your leadership and your guidance. So we really need to have that everyday conversation with you for about a full month. After that time period, we make sure that you have contact information for the trainers that worked with you throughout your handler training experience. So you leave with a contact sheet so that you can reach a trainer 7 days a week. And I know that's probably surprising at this point, because if you are in the applications process, you're thinking, man, it's hard to reach anyone there. Organizations, we are so busy helping people. So like going back to the 300 emails a day and 2,000 applications that we have to review, there are different staff members at Little Angels who will be working with you and be supporting you through different phases of your experience and your relationship with us. And after you have your dog, we make sure that you can contact us anytime, because that's not something where you can just wait for an email to be returned to you or wait for a phone call to be returned. You need to speak to someone right then and there. We don't want the dog, going down the wrong path. Like I keep saying, a service dog has to walk a very narrow path in order to help you. So we make sure that you have that support. We also have a lot of other requirements that are set into place after you receive a service dog. And it's not just because we have a responsibility to you and to your dog, but we also have a responsibility to the community who work together to get you this dog. There were a lot of people that invested to get this dog to you. So going back to our volunteers, we have volunteers that have worked with this dog, maybe one dog for a full year before they returned it to our program. And they returned it crying buckets of tears because they became very attached to this dog. They invested so much of themselves, so much of their heart and their soul, sometimes even their money, all to help an individual who has a disability. And our volunteers, they aren't doing this just because they like dogs. If they were doing this because they like dogs, they could just go get their own dog and keep it forever and hug it forever. But they are doing it for an individual with a disability. which is why they do cry when they bring that dog back. Why it is a heart-wrenching process, but it's also a beautiful thing because they know that in a way they have helped someone, they have helped to change someone's life through their investment in volunteering with Little Angels. And then we also have our financial supporters. They are making a donation to make sure that this dog is a service dog. So if at some point your disability changes and you no longer need this dog, like let's say that you have epilepsy and your seizures stop, that is a blessing. It's a wonderful thing. We are not going to come behind that and take your dog from you. That dog is now a member of your family. So if you don't need the dog to assist anymore, it can just be a pet. But as long as you need it to be a service dog, we are going to ensure that that dog continues to assist you as long as possible. And the best way that we can do that is to make sure that we have regular follow-ups and contact with you. So we have a 6-month maintenance report that is due every 6 months for the life of the dog. Half of that is your report card on how the dog is assisting you. It's kind of like a grading system. You're grading the dog like you're the teacher and the dog is the student. We can then assess that and give you any tips that are needed. The other half is filled out by your veterinarian, and that lets us know that the dog is still healthy, and the healthier it is, the longer it can help you. So it is a win-win situation. And again, remember, we still have a responsibility to that dog for the lifetime of that dog. And then we also have a 2-year recertification period. And this is where if you are local to us, we're going to meet you for lunch and you're going to demonstrate in public that your dog is performing the way that it was trained to. And if not, you have a professional trainer standing right there in front of you who can guide you through that process, who can hold on to the leash and give you these tips. If you are not local to San Diego, or if you cannot travel back to San Diego every 2 years, then we are going to contract an American Kennel Club Canine Good Citizen evaluator in your area. These are trainers who are everywhere, thankfully, and they've already proven that they have a lot of dog training experience. It's usually experience training pets or competition dogs, but they do have good experience, and they've proven that to the American Kennel Club. What we're going to do is we are going to guide them in the differences for a service dog, and they are going to communicate back and forth with us through videos and technologies that we fortunately have. And we're going to make sure that you do have a trainer that knows how to help you reinforce any training if you're having any trouble right where you're at. So that's pretty much the whole process in receiving your service dog and the follow-up support that you're receiving after that. We want to make sure that we remain available to you, like I said, for the lifetime of the dog. And in this video, here at the end, I'm going to give you a code, and this code is so that you can respond in an email. Some of you have been directed to this video because we have requested that you watch this video before your phone consultation. Your code is Little Angels. Should be pretty easy to remember. So you're just going to put that code Little Angels into the email, and we'll rest assured that you have watched this video. You're going to enter that code as long as you understand everything that has been discussed and gone over in this video. If you have any questions whatsoever, don't enter the code. Just voice your questions in that email, and we're going to make sure that you have the understanding before you move forward. It is really important to us that you know exactly what you're stepping into when you're getting a service dog, and not just a service dog in general, but a dog through Little Angels. We want to welcome you into the family and know that you are confident and assured of this entire process. Well, thanks for watching, and look forward to working with you further. Bye-bye.